Welcome to Retrospect Rewind. This week, we start by taking a look back to May of 1996, when the sport of karate surged in popularity among fitness enthusiasts.
The sport of karate is so much more than a sport and so much more than kicks and jabs. It is both physically and mentally demanding. As one quickly finds out, inner discipline is a key in this sport.
I think more than just the ability to fight or defend yourself, we're trying to build confidence in people. And the hope is that the confidence they gain through disciplining themselves in the martial arts will carry into other aspects of their life, be it school, their job, their relationships, whatever it happens to be.
This past weekend's clinic put a cap to the karate season, as many will take the summer off from competition before resuming the competitive part of the sport in the fall. Karate, like taekwondo, judo, and boxing, are all competing for the fitness trade in the Midwest. And whatever sport one picks, it will teach you more than just fighting, but fighting in the big game called life.
My philosophy is it's not the particular activity you get involved in, as long as that activity is run in a proper manner and you have proper instructors, coaches, be it what it is, and the right message is getting out. Then I think just the fact that they are involved in some form of activity and gaining the confidence and the skills, then you're going to get the same benefit.
One true belief in karate is a sound mind and body. But hey, learning a good drop kick can't hurt. Greg Buchanan, NewsHour Sports.
And back in 2003, the federal government unveils its plans to renew Canada's drug policies.
People in possession of small quantities of marijuana could possibly face less severe penalties. This comes after the federal government announced plans to renew Canada's drug strategy.
The main changes is going to be that you're not going to be having a criminal record for a small amount of marijuana. Right now, it's a criminal record. The fine is exactly the same as what the courts have been handing out for years for a small amount of marijuana. The difference is you're not going to have a criminal record, which is going to can affect obviously jobs, travel, that sort of thing. So that's the biggest effect there.
The proposed legislation has sparked varying opinions here in Lloydminster.
Oh, I don't think they should decriminalize it. However, alcohol probably causes more deaths, so they probably should put stiffer fines in for alcohol.
Well, they probably got reasons for doing it, and whether it'll work the way they hope it will or not is something we'll find out and we'll know in a couple of years' time.
The proposed cannabis legislative reforms introduced today will see people in possession of minimal amounts of marijuana receive a fine, while growers will face prison sentences dependent upon the size of the growing operation. The federal government says the drug strategy is being introduced to address addiction and promote public safety. Substance abuse professionals say this is important legislation because of the harm associated with marijuana use.
Certainly it can become very, very, especially mentally addictive and causes lots of problems. People that use it, daily, certainly, lose their ability to function in the normal world properly. They become, totally dependent on having to have it all the time. Their life really doesn't function without it.
The Government of Canada will invest $245 million over 5 years to reduce both the demand for as well as the supply of drugs. Health Minister Anne McLellan says the strategy allows the government to develop the tools to prevent and treat substance abuse. The campaigns will be specifically targeted towards Canadian youth. Linda Wilcox, NewsHour.
We'll be back with more Retrospect Rewind after this short break. Welcome back to Retrospect Rewind. Let's take it back to 1990, where a special flag-raising ceremony supports the Mohawks at the Onion Lake Annual Powwow.
The Onion Lake Annual Powwow was the site of a special flag-raising ceremony to support the Mohawks in Oka, Quebec. The mood of the Indians was sad, but at the same time angry, because they feel the Canadian government is giving all Indians, not just the Mohawks, a rough time.
Many, many Indians have died in the First and Second World War in Korea, fighting for this country, and now we find that we have to fight this country for what little piece of land that they had left us.
The flags are raised in sympathy to the Mohawks, and Dylan says he doesn't think a golf course is worth all this hassle. This is Cliff Tailfeathers from Montana. He's a Blackfoot Indian and veteran of the Vietnam conflict, and he says the raising of the American flag is a show of support and unity between Indians from the States and Canada.
And I don't blame the Mohawk Indians for doing what they're doing now. I feel myself, I feel they're fighting for the rightful thing, and they should be given what they are asking.
Tailfeathers adds governments north and south of the border are guilty when it comes to Aboriginal rights. He says the American government has just recognized treaties and rights that were given to Indians many years ago. Kevin Wilson, Broadcast Center News on the Onion Lake Cultural Grounds.
And in the year 2000, an unexpected hailstorm hits the town of Edgerton.
It started shortly after 4 o'clock Sunday afternoon when this unexpected storm hit the town of Edgerton. Brenda Spornitz and her family took refuge in their motorhome.
There was just a deafening thump, 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 thump. It was incredibly loud, and it was just pelleting the motorhome, like you were being bombed.
Hail, ranging in size from golf balls to baseballs, battered the town, leaving in its wake a trail of damage. Homes and vehicles were hit the hardest. Windshields were smashed. Hoods and rooftops were plummeted by one of the most severe storms this community has ever seen.
Nothing as severe as that. I've seen hailstorms, but nothing like that. Stones the capacity they were yesterday. It was almost to the scary part. We were in a van and it was so noisy in there you couldn't even talk.
Like being attacked in your trailer. Somebody throwing stuff at you or bombs. It was quite the thing.
Kent Herbert has worked in the aviation industry for more than 16 years. Part of his job included tracking weather systems. He says as frightening as this storm was, he's grateful it wasn't worse.
If there had been a wind with that, we would have had homes ruined. We would have had probably people killed instead of injured. Because you imagine, getting hit by a softball at 100 miles an hour, puts another 60 miles an hour wind on that. Yeah, it would have been horrendous. I just can't imagine.
And today, the cleanup begins. The town is littered with broken glass, leaves, and branches.
The hailstone is hit. When it hits, it gets dirty, and the pock markers from the hitting, all the ridges of dirt, is from the sand that was on it as it melted. And there's other places in the mud where you can just see the pock mark itself. But the whole backyard gardens are just, it looks like the surface of the moon.
While cleanup efforts are underway, residents can be assured they will receive help and be taken care of.
I've already taken about 50 phone calls and names after the storm is over. I went through the sports grounds and just started collecting clients' names and told them that we will handle it.
Rochelle Chandria, NewsHour.
We'll be back with more Retrospect Rewind after this short break. Welcome back to Retrospect Rewind. Let's take it back to 1990, when a large debt amassed by the Provost Hospital Board concerned citizens.
The Provost Hospital Board has gotten itself into a bit of hot water. The hospital has amassed a debt of $775,000, which has been accumulating since 1984. This is a fairly large debt, and people in Provost have voiced their concern. Mel Downing is the hospital administrator, and he says the debt is high because of the high fixed costs. He adds the plan that is going into effect shortly will save the hospital a great deal of money.
Yes, there is a bed closure. We have to cut back to try and deal with this deficit. We will be trying to save approximately $150,000 a year.
The board has been reluctant to hold a public meeting, which has confused some people. Downing says the board feels the public has been well informed through newspaper stories and press releases, and a public meeting is not necessary. Ken Knox is the mayor of Provost, and he disagrees with Downing. He says the reaction to the debt has been mixed, but mostly concern. Knox says the decision to close the beds came as a shock, and because of the shock, he feels the board should call the meeting.
My own personal opinion is that if a public meeting were to be held, it would probably alleviate a lot of the anxieties and concerns. People would be able to ask questions that are really bothering them and probably get some answers.
He adds the board gave the town the impression that everything was going smoothly, and then there was a huge debt. Because of that, he would like the hospital to let people know ahead of time if there is a problem and what they are going to do about it. Butch Fisher is the MLA for Wainwright, and he thinks the people of Provost are just panicking, and he's disappointed that the town hasn't offered to help out. When it comes to blame, he puts some of it on the board, but he adds the government had a lot to do with it too. He also adds the problem is bad, but it's not unique to Provost.
Remember, Provost is not the only hospital that's gotten into this situation. And we are fortunate in the fact that the bed closure here, they close some beds in Edmonton when they run 99% full, and that's really got to hurt. When we're looking at bed closure here, we shouldn't have a big effect on the people here.
Although Fisher does not entirely blame the board, he would like to see better management practiced so something like this doesn't happen again. Kevin Wilson, Broadcast Center News, Provost.
And in the year 2000, the Canadian Boer-Goat Association works on creating a new market for Chevron.
Boer goats are hardly a common animal in Canada. There are just 1,800 registered purebreds and even fewer crossbreds. However, that's changing. The Canadian Boer-Goat Association is working to create new markets for Chevron.
Once we get various marketing channels in place for the meat part of the industry, both commercial animals and breeding stock animals, numbers are going to increase.
Most Boer goat meat is currently shipped to larger cities. The ethnic community in those centers is the major Canadian market for the product.
The ethnic market is so huge that we can't even come close to filling it with production at this point.
The association recently held their first information conference in Vermilion. The large demand for Chevron is not enough to draw more producers into the industry. De Young expects the convention will.
After this weekend, the education that they had here, we've had a lot of interest in local people getting into the business.
Marketing is the largest challenge facing Boer goat producers. However, there's another hurdle to overcome: improving the animal's public image.
I think the majority of people who aren't familiar with them see them to be skinny, shaggy, horned things that jump on Uncle Floyd's car and eat the garden. However, we are trying to project a far more positive image, and as you can see here, they are livestock. They're behind a fence. They're not running around the yard like a pet. They are very useful in range management and in complementary grazing with cattle. And
Josh Clausen, NewsHour.
We'll be back with more Retrospect Rewind after this short break. Welcome back to Retrospect Rewind. Let's travel back to 1991, where swimmer's itch had everyone itching for relief.
Some call it a Canadian disease. It happens in northern lakes, and it's part of an ecological chain. Swimmer's itch. To most, it's just a hassle. The itch is caused by a small parasite that is carried by a freshwater snail, and the majority of the infestation is for a short period of time, when the water of a lake warms up. Pharmacist Gay Hironaka gives her customers some advice to help prevent them from getting the itch.
Well, I advise when people go to the lake to spend a minimal amount of time in these warm water lakes, and as soon as they get out of the water, to shower well and remove as much as the parasite or the contaminated water on their skin so that they'll get less of an irritation.
People who live by lakes with the itch suggest covering the body with an oil that will prevent the parasite from clinging to the skin, as well as toweling off vigorously when you get out of the water. If you do get the itch, Dr. Helen Bowden says not to worry.
It's not serious at all. It's a nuisance. And if you get a really bad infestation, it's a real nuisance because it is very, very itchy. But it's not serious, it passes.
But what can you do until it passes? Hironaka says to use any of the calamine-based creams containing calamine and zinc oxide in them. These are Caladril, Benadryl, Phenegrin, and any drugstore will have its own generic brand. These creams should help soothe the skin and lessen the irritation, but if the itching becomes uncontrollable, an antihistamine could be applied topically or taken orally. Other methods are bathing in baking powder or Aveeno powder, which are also used for the chicken pox. The itch is small red bumps that appear on the body, similar to mosquito bites, that really irritate the skin. What causes it is the parasite in the water clinging to the skin when a swimmer gets out of the lake. And then, as the skin dries, the parasite digs into the skin in an attempt to stay wet. Some lakes that report having the itch are Whitney and Ross Lakes, which are in the Elk Point area, and Sandy Beach, close to Lloydminster. So the possibility of the itch occurring at other lakes does exist. Jeannie Haining, Health Watch.
And in 1996, Lloydminster gets a makeover.
Construction crews are hard at work on this new condominium complex, just one of many beautification projects on the go in Lloydminster.
That was really more of a specific development proposal. The advantage it has is it's downtown, and so it attracts a very attractive building to the downtown, but also because it's residential, it gets more residences in the downtown as well.
The City of Lloydminster is working on a joint project with the Streetscapes Company to plant more trees along 50th Avenue. As for the building upgrades we've seen around the downtown area, they're really up to the business owners.
Some of the business owners have decided that in order to rent their building, they're going to have to improve their building. So they've put some money in, and there's been a more concerted effort with trying to find people to lease the buildings. And I think that's all sort of all come together along with Streetscapes to make it look a lot better.
Here at the Heritage Center Co-op, renovations are underway as they try to open up some space for new businesses.
Our goal is to try and target someone that will complement the business we have here now. Help with the traffic draw. It'll be a reciprocating thing, but I think that by having someone here that complements our business will help the downtown and our co-op association as a whole.
One new business will open at the Heritage Center tomorrow. The owners of Cappuccino Voltaire saw the co-op's renovations as the perfect opportunity.
We heard that they were going to be making some changes and looking for new ideas and hoping to attract a young crowd into the mall, and we're hoping to do the same thing.
The city says all of these projects are creating a more beautiful border city, a project that is ongoing.
So you never reach an end point. It's always an ephemeral target that you're shooting for. And so every year you try something a little different, a little newer, a little change here, a little modification there, and eventually, you keep moving ahead in that way. But you don't ever want to say, hey, we're done.
Joshua Clausen, NewsHour.
Next, we journey forward to 2001, when there's a push for more accessibility options.
Parking for the physically disabled, an issue the Saskatchewan Human Rights Commission wants the border city to look at.
They've identified wider spaces for side loading. They've identified that there's a need for more in some numbers. Some numbers remain the same.
The Human Rights Commission wants to see lots with 5 to 10 stalls reserve one handicap spot. As for lots with 11 to 100 stalls, they would allot 1 plus 4% to disabled people, and larger lots, they'll give 4% towards handicapped parking. Sounds simple, but Councillor Richer thinks this may cause some concern for smaller businesses.
As soon as you get to 11 stalls required in any development, you require 2 barrier-free or wheelchair accessible stalls. And 10 isn't very much. You really get there very quickly, and so on a lot of the infills, as we call them, in smaller developments, that really becomes an impingement.
It's because of this that Council tabled the amendment, but numbers aren't the only thing to look at. The Human Rights recommendation also looks at spacing in parking stalls, something that is a bigger issue for residents.
The only thing you can do is park as far over to the left-hand side of it as you can. That gives you room enough to get out the side door. But if they're parked too close, you pretty near have to get out of the van before you pull into the parking lot.
This is also an issue for agencies working with the disabled.
The length provided is lots of times not long enough for us.
For handy van drivers who do only pickups and drop-offs, spacing is a challenge.
We don't actually have to look for a parking spot, just an accessible place to unload.
And there's a lot of accessibility?
Pretty much. It's pretty good for where we go.
As for those who park in handicapped stalls, the recommendations do call for expanded space in loading zones and parking stalls. As for City Council, it will be looking into passing the bylaw amendments in the near future. Anne-Marie Blackburn, NewsHour.
Next, we'll revisit 1996 to explore the costs of preparing kids for the new school year.
And that's on the inside. By the time you get shoes and stuff in there, it'd probably be closer to 5.
That's the cry from many parents this time of year as the cash registers keep ringing and the totals get higher and higher.
72.76. You need at least 2 pairs of shoes. They need indoor shoes. They need outdoor shoes. They grow out of everything over the summer, so it's like you have to re-outfit them.
She will spend between $500 and $600 by the time she's finished school shopping for her 2 children. Crayons, pencils, glue, the school supplies add up, and some parents feel it's just too much. One Lloydminster mother said her daughter's supply list stated she needed 10 glue sticks.
I took an average school supply list for a grade 3 student in Lloydminster and tallied up how much everything would cost. Taking into account various sales, required school supplies for this child would cost around $70. But that does not include the money parents have to shell out to make their kids look cool.
We have 5 teenagers that we buy for. A pair of jeans for them to be happy now is between $60 and $80.
So they have to be cool. No geeky clothes.
But what is it the kids are looking for?
Calvin Klein and Club Monaco.
That's denim and cords. Cords we have a hard time keeping in enough of. It's big demand this year. Wanting the style that they want for their personality is more what I find that they've been looking for when they come in.
The younger ones are wanting licensed clothes like the gargoyles and the same in their school supplies. And the older ones are probably into something like this, which is the Sharks logo.
Parents want some kids to dress up in really weird clothes. Kids want t-shirts that are baggy and jeans that are fit right and brand name shoes.
Some parents say those brand names put pressure on the kids to dress like everyone else and pressure on the parents to try and afford it. But they say sometimes you just have to splurge.
And plus, let's face it, if they look good, they're going to feel good.
Julie Matthews, NewsHour.
Thank you for joining me in this week's edition of Retrospect Rewind. Join me again next time to take a nostalgic walk through the past.